Hold on. Does everyone have that? So he's saying ad-du'a. That means the du'a huwa al-ibadah. It is the worship. Meaning the du'a mentioned in this ayah is ibadah. Do you understand? He didn't say du'a'un huwa al-ibadah. Any du'a is ibadah. He didn't say that. The actual translation of ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah. The supplication is worship. What supplication? Well, he quoted the supplication is worship. Then he quoted Surah Ghafir, ayah 60. What he means is the supplication being used in this ayah, that is worship. Do you understand? Not every single dua is worship, because there's a difference between what's being stated. Let me just write it very quickly on the board. The Arabic is ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah. But Salafis often translate it ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah. Salafis will translate it. I'll just put CT for corrupted translation. Okay? Supplication is worship. But that is incorrect. That is not what this ayah, that's not what this hadith means. That's not what's being said. What's actually, and I'll just put CC or CT, I'll actually put authentic translation, AT. What that means is the supplication. Because both are in the definite form. The supplication is the worship. And what's he speaking in context of? The ayah that he quoted, because he's doing what? Giving tafsir of Surah Ghafir. He's giving tafsir of an ayah. Surah Ghafir, the 40th Surah, ayah 60. He's not making just a blanket statement. He's telling you about a specific ayah. Very important. Okay? Very, very important. So, please continue, Brother Bukhar.
The reader can refer to the relevant chapter himself and see if this is the case. If the reader was to take the position of salafiyya that all calling is supplication and all supplication is worship, which is against the plain meaning of the hadith and the ayah with it, and also consensus, this will lead to absurdities when reading the Quran and Sunnah. Let us take a few examples. Say, quote, unbelievers, I will not worship that which you worship. Surah Al-Kafirun, Surah 108, ayah 1 to 2. If we take this at face value, Allah is telling His Prophet to commit idolatry, and as He is calling on the believers, on the unbelievers, which is supplication, and every supplication is worship. The first ayah even contains the Arabic particles ya, English or which is used to call people. Consider another ayah where Allah revealed, say, quote, Jews, if you claim that you are the friends of Allah to the exclusion of the rest of humanity, then hope for death if you are truthful. Unquote. Surah Al-Jumu'ah, 62nd Surah, Ayah 6. Again, using the logic of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab and his organization, idolatry is being committed as one is calling on the people mentioned in the ayah. Even believers could be committing idolatry by reading the ayah, as not only are they calling on other than Allah, but the people mentioned in the ayah directly are now dead. The reader is calling on other than Allah, and also calling the dead who, according to the organization, cannot hear anyway. Thus following Salafiyya to its logical conclusion leads to horrible mistakes like these here. 3.
Okay, did everyone understand what happened? So, the section here, Ya ayyuhalladhina hadu, O Jews, if you claim that you're friends of Allah to the exclusion of the rest of humanity, then hope for death if you're truthful. If we follow the logic of Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, these ayat, you would be committing major shirk by reciting these in Taraweeh. Because you're saying, you're calling on other than Allah, if all supplication is worship. And then it becomes a situation because you're also calling on the dead, because the Jews addressed in that ayah, they're dead now, aren't they? And you're guilty of now calling on the dead. So now you're doing major shirk by calling on other than Allah, and you're doing major shirk by calling on the dead. You see? So you have to look at the plain meaning of this ayah cannot be intended. But here's part 3, number 3 note though. Brother Bukhar, could you read that?
Salafia normally claims and prides itself on quoting only the most authentic hadith.
Have you ever ran across that? When you're dealing with salafis, you say, we can only quote the most authentic proofs. We quote the strongest evidences. Right? But read what Imam al-Tirmidhi says about this.
For this particular hadith stated by Imam al-Tirmidhi, may Allah be pleased with him, is not fully accounted for, as it was known through one chain of transmission. The fact that Salafiyah are unable to find any stronger evidence on the topic will then lead to using less than unimpeachable evidence should make the reader wonder how sincere this organization is in its claims and to its own followers.
Okay, so think about this. Their best evidence is a hadith that's in Tirmidhi that is authentic but it's not unimpeachable because it's only mentioned in one transmission. And the one thing the Salafiyah always says is, we only quote the strongest proofs. Quran and Hadith, Quran and Hadith, Quran and Hadith. That's the mantra they always give you. But the fact of the matter is Imam al-Tirmidhi, who is the collector of this Hadith, says it's only accounted for through one transmission. Number 1, it's out of context. Number 2, the context is not supported according to the Arabic language because it would lead to absurdities if you take it that way. And that's not how the early generations understood it. And then number 3, it's not even fully accounted for. The next time you will get into a discussion, I want you, if you ever are encountering Salafiyah again, at your university campus, at your local ISOC, or other places, ask them to say, what is the main reason why you think that shirk is such a problem for Muslims today? And as you go through the conversation, all of a sudden that hadith will come up. They'll say, yes, and the Prophet ﷺ said, and a lot of times they really pride themselves on quoting the Arabic, ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah. And that leaves an impact because, he's used Arabic, and people jump back as if, you have a cross pointing to Dracula. And people are supposed to be terrified that, he's just quoted Arabic. And people hide behind that. He's just quoted the hadith. But what you need to do is keep a calm head and say, I see what you've said. But what does that hadith mean? It means just that. It's clear cut, isn't it? Well, do you have the entire hadith? Yeah, it's right here. No, that's not the entire hadith. That's not the basis of why that hadith was revealed and the whole reason. Who's the companion that narrated that hadith? Well, let's not argue about that right now. I'm just giving you the hadith. Yeah, but who's the companion that narrated the hadith? Since we're talking about hadith and arguing, who's the companion that narrated it? And Nu'man ibn Bashir. Okay, what's the context of it? This was revealed because of a verse, and he commentated upon the verse. Well, I don't want to get into all that. I just want to talk about the topic of shirk. But we have to in order to discuss shirk. Because can this be used for the topic of shirk? أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم أستغفر الله إن الله غفور رحيم.